Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in. If you're here, then you are in the right place, and I appreciate that, and I know everybody else does. So, welcome everyone. Speaking favor over us all, as we say, nothing missing, nothing broken. So. Trina will be joining us soon, but in the interim, you know who I am and my beautiful, lovely co-host, Miss Jennifer Roberts. Jenny, how are you, my dear? Haven't seen you in almost a month. You and Trina both.
It's felt so long, hasn't it? Yeah, I'm good now. It was a nasty, nasty bug that took us out last week.
Yeah,
So, the
everyone feeling
body's,
better?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we were so poorly. Um, so the body's still feeling like it's recovering. But I just looked at the boys this morning and said, doesn't it feel good to not feel like we did 3 days ago, even? Just that the difference. So it's been a nasty bug, a very virile bug in that neighbors have had it. So it's been quite a chesty, not nice symptoms, but we got through it. So yeah, I was
Mm.
drenching the boys in creams when they were sleeping.
Well, I'll tell you, if illness comes to visit, you would be the one I'd want to come visit,
Oh,
because it would leave the others. So it's so good
yeah,
to
I
see you.
appreciate it. It is so
Um,
good to see you too.
it's been yeah. I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat room for the kind words. Lost my dancer, and it's been a tough morning. Um, you know, she passed right in my hand, and I saw Lost in Space with your family. I mean, that's what these animals become. I mean, Coda. So Lost in Space, we I know, man. Mm, it hurts. That's all you can say. It hurts. And particularly when, with Dancer, she was with us, with me almost, she was almost 14. And every day I was cyclically connected to that. You can talk to my wife, Lynn, that this dog knew when I was agitated or when I was upset. Um, the last 6 months, she started kind of declining, and it got her more difficult for her to jump. And so I was always there. I'd pick her up, take her out. And, when the separation of her, whether you believe they have a soul or a spirit, doesn't matter. They're alive, and they know more about love than humans ever hope to write about.
Yes,
Because they don't write about it, they don't think about it. It just is, Jenny. And
it's just an action. Yeah, it's just an action that they choose, that they
yeah,
choose.
it's
Uh, Even dogs that are so much bigger than us and so much more powerful physically, for the most part, given their own choice, will choose to be nothing but loving and affectionate and protective.
yeah,
And the same with a small dog. We laugh about Pup Pup, who was tiny. She would take on a lion for Rosie.
yeah,
She would,
yeah,
and there's
yeah,
this timid little puppy at home, never growled once. Um, Never been angry in any way with us humans. But when the horses have gotten out of, there's been a naughty horse or the size of this little teacup dog, will stand her ground in front of that one that she loves, in front of a horse. And so it's unconditional. It's an unconditional choice that they make. And that deserves a lot of reverence from us.
oh
And I
yeah,
think it brings out the what I would hope to be the real humanity in us. I feel like they at least keep that balance somewhat to create enough love in this society still to make it livable as it is, and for us to be able to find those slithers of light, when we
yeah.
do. Because these animals do hold space and time for our failings.
And they
They
teach us.
really do.
I can speak for myself, and so many of you in the chat room I'm seeing. Again, thank you, all of you. You know what it is, and particularly I found myself yesterday, last evening, because I could hear the death rattle. And,
Yeah.
it was interesting because I found myself actually speaking to the spirit of death. I said, it's time for you to make the visit here. And of course, I spoke, the blessings for her in the next realm. And then I read this somewhere. I think it's the Native American Indians believe that if you capture the last breath of an animal, then that animal's spirit becomes a part of your spirit.
I
And
totally.
right as her spirit was leaving her body, and she just kind of made a very unusual sound. And as I was holding her and just looked into her eyes, and that last breath hit me, the very last breath in her body. So, yeah. And then when you have to bury them, it brings,
Humbleness
yeah,
humbles you.
yeah.
It humbles you. It brings, again, it doesn't matter about physical size or prowess or not. It brings any person to their knees. You can have psychopaths that love these pets that they have, and they bring out a humbleness in those people. So you can imagine the kind of humble essence that it can bring out of somebody like you and some people like in our chat room. And um because if they can bring out the beauty from the darkest spaces of humanity, they certainly bring out the light in those that can carry that frequency also. And I feel like that they draw that out of us, and I totally get that last breath thing, that they're quite willing to give their essence over to us,
Hmm. Yeah.
making that choice again, to love with us. Because I just know from my practice that I've had a lot of pets come through, um, that come through very easily and rapidly, sometimes easier than other beings. And I just really feel it's because they're not constrained by the limitations of what's possible. They just take that action, they make that choice to be with, to love with, to gaze at, to breathe with, to purr at, if you've got a cat. Or it's really, I do feel that, and this is where there's the beauty in this morning
Yeah.
together with you in a congregation, because there's beauty in that pain, such beauty, because in that pain it's encapsulated all of those gazes that you saw for the last
Hmm.
time. It's encapsulated all of those infinite times where that love was just breathed over you, from this beautiful pet. Um, all of those times, all of that essence is given back over to you again. And there's nothing but beauty in this pain either, which seems like an odd thing to say, but when you can give yourself over to unselfish love like that without being afraid of this painful aspect of it, it's the only caveat to really experiencing the lovely bit first. If you're willing to be that counsel, that death counsel for that pet at that last time, because in order to gain all that beauty, the balance is that you feel the void, and the physical emptiness initially. Um, and it's a moment just to look back. It's a moment to reflect. It's a moment to cry. It's a moment to actually be more like the animal that's past, unquestionable about doing what you feel and acting on how you feel in a way that is loving. So it's a
Yeah,
powerful
it's true. It is
experience.
powerful. They're, and I guess she trained me, but well, because and it's interesting with pets. I just want to say, hey, Cody, good to see you. So many in your chat room. Thank you. Um, you know, it's interesting because it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah,
And as it is with other of our species, humans. And, because you feed them, you pick up after them, you take care of them, and what they give back in return far outweighs,
priceless.
um, is we laughed here amongst ourselves because I was the doorman. But it was, again, she was smart enough that, when she knew to go outside, and so it didn't bother me. But yeah, um, it's the point of grieving as well. We don't talk about that much here, but grieving it has its importance. And
Oh,
I think like you were kind of saying, there is a certain, as I was talking to the creator of all things, there's a lot of things I don't understand. This whole
100%.
cycle we have here of life, death, or whether you want to consider that this is death and we go into life. But it's those moments that we share. And it's interesting with a other species, how humans, and in this case, canine dogs, there is this natural bond between us, much more so than any other animal group that I know of.
Yeah, yeah. And the grieving process as well, I think for a lot of us has been um, sterilized in a way that isn't healthy or helpful for us. In that, with a lot of our pets, and in particular dogs, because they're not the size of a horse, so we do the whole ritual. We take that last breath, we wash them down and make them whole again before wrapping them and burying them. We actually dig the hole, we grab the calluses on our hands to do that process, and that brings us, that's giving reverence, that's giving reverence to the animal, because you're taking that time to do that ritual. But also for you, it opens up all sorts of doors that, if they were to stay shut, become toxic or become
Oh yeah.
harmful to the inner being. And so that is also the gift as well, of being able to still be connected to the whole process of life and death. And it shows you the importance of carrying out that ritual and being the one to do the physical work, the emotional work, the care work, in order to make sure that that pet is revered in the way that we used to do for family members quite normally. It was always the family that washed down the body. Helpers would come in from the street, and that's not that long ago in the UK. And they would, a lot of Irish people still do that, but it's an important thing that we've lost. A lot of the ritual process has become very sterilized. So again, I think pets, in particular smaller pets, cats, dogs, they bring us back to that space that we need in order to be able to process life and death in a whole, loving way, rather than it becoming toxifying or a debilitating, a lifelong debility, which a lot of people feel after grief now. And I do feel that's a lot to do with the whole physical ritual that you have done and facilitated for Dancer.
Oh,
It has opened up those doors for you and for Lynn to process that pain, and to give the pain itself the reverence it deserves. Um, for you to lock away that pain and not have those doors opened by doing this burial ritual and everything that comes with that. It's almost not giving enough reverence to the thing that created the pain, which was the thing of beauty. That those memories are actually beautiful. And for those doors to be open, it's really important. So I'm
yeah.
glad you did that. And of course you always would, but I'm glad those doors have opened up for you. And
Well, we got
let them
favor.
stay
As
open.
I said, we do.
Yeah,
I was marveling as I was putting her body, because it was just her body now.
yeah,
She's with me. I mean, I sense that and I know that, but it, so I was out there just kind of meditating and just speaking to, you know, this, whatever it is, this power, this creative force. And, Jenny, it's quite something when you look at it, what humans are, and we think that we have these, uh, elevated souls that, We are in the image of the divine. But yet, what I find so interesting is how a human soul can bond with another animal, in this
Yeah,
case, a dog. And and I was telling Lynn, I said, it's it's one of those miracles that I don't quite grasp, but I can see it. The fact that two souls of two different species who can't communicate but yet talk very fluently between themselves, that's one of the most
that's the
fascinating
thing.
things of this realm. It just,
And it is communication because
yes.
that's how dogs can sense if an epileptic fit is coming on, or they can be trained to sniff out cancer. It's not that they can sniff out every
Or the
single cancer.
cat going in the nursing home and
Yeah, and
a
purring.
lot of
You,
people don't know why they have cats in nursing homes, but
they're
cats are
important.
always the harbinger of the patient's going to die. If the cat goes into your room,
And they
then
purr on that patient. They
yeah,
purr
and
louder
they
than they've
wait
ever
for it.
purred
Yeah.
before. And that purr is so important. We know that it can calm people who have ADHD. If they listen to a cat's purr or bees buzzing, it can calm those neurons down in order for them to think clearly or clear the brain fog. That carries space and time in a frequency that we can't create, that brings such comfort to the people that are in the room with the dying person, but also with the dying person, and they know it, and it's just this quiet, solid, raw, vibrating through the being, and bringing a lot more peace and rest in the process than if they weren't there. It's really important, and they do communicate, and they communicate on the animalistic level of smelling the cortisol in our bodies to know when we're stressed, so that a dog will come over and lick you. They'll taste the salt. They're tasting the salt. They're licking you to get a
Mhm.
reading of you. And that's how a lot of these dogs can be trained for medical purposes, to give people warnings, because they'll lick the salts of you.
Yeah.
And so, but we've got that inside of us. As children, we can more intuitively communicate, even when there's language barriers. We don't need the language as much. It's as we get into adulthood and we forget the nuances of communication that we actually are very capable of doing. And these bonds with these animals prove that we are able to connect at a level that doesn't involve language wholeheartedly. It doesn't
Oh,
involve body language. It involves everything, a whole connection.
Lost in Space said that Coda, was in his lap, and I've read this other comments, and it's yesterday evening, I knew the time was approaching, and it was interesting because I would sing to Dancer, and there was this calmness that was came over her, and I thought to myself, it's so interesting. The things that soothe and comfort us is also received with, again, another animal species, but they respond to it, and it is a lesson. It is a lesson in life that, someone I read, who was it that said that, when an animal bonds to you, that's rare. A lot of humans don't have pets. They don't, and the reason for it is that I think in many cases they're too self-centered within themselves to take on the responsibility, or
Yeah.
and much more important to actually spend the time necessary to bond, you know,
Mhm.
with an animal. And
Yeah.
Dancer,
It
it's
takes
quite interesting. Lynn was pointing this out because there's a lot of dogs have different personalities, but when Dancer, and she chose me, it was interesting because her spirit was such a sweet, gentle spirit,
Mm.
and it's it has always been that way. But yeah, yeah,
And that sweet,
I'm a richer
gentle
man
spirit,
for it.
like, yeah, yeah, abundantly so, and lost in space too, to you too. that's just like Pup. She is the sweetest, most pure spirit. When you look into those button eyes, I mean, my goodness. But at the same time, that even that is such a force. Like I said, they can bring people who would do terrible things in life to their knees also and make them just smile and gaze at this wonderful animal, without a growl, without a roar, without a scratch, just this very stoic, gentle, peaceful love can be such a dynamic force that can stop the worst things in their tracks and take the breath away of those that actually can capture the beauty of them.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm sorry about that, friend. It's like I said, since I have a lot going on, this show is triggering my sadness. Well,
I'm sorry,
I can dig that.
but let
And
us be with
it's
you
not
in
meant
that
to bring you
sadness.
down.
No,
It's like
no, but let's
just,
not do that. Let's be okay with being with you also in that sadness, Chris.
yeah.
And let this be the space then today that you are allowed unapologetically to feel that sadness, knowing that you're covered and surrounded by the love that can understand it, that can appreciate it and be with you in communion with it again. And let's give praise and thanks to the animals that have touched your life, that you're now remembering, and give praise and thanks to the memories that are being triggered by this sadness. Let's bring joy to you and love to you also in that space rather than avoiding it. Let's dance in it, just like dancer. Let's surround ourselves. Let's bask in it and be okay to say we love you too, Chris, and you're surrounded by love. So if there's any good or bad place to be sad and have those beautiful memories come through, then this would be it, because we're
Hmm.
with you and we love you and appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I do too. And in sadness, it's one of those, it's interesting because as I reflect, it's moments like this that I guess you really find out what your spirit of it, but it's humbling. I think you had
Yeah,
used that word earlier, and it is because you deal with these life energy forces that we talk about here all the time. And because each one of us individually is that life force. And we really do choose, and sometimes it's by providence that we have other souls that come in to our paths. And many times we don't bond, but many in those times when we do, yeah, it for me, it was part of the experience. It was part of this experience of here. And I have no doubt that my little dancer will be waiting for me when I make my transition. And then when that happens, people will be sad about that. They're going to
yes,
be
yes,
thinking about all the times we met here and,
yes.
wherever that is in the future. I'm not saying it anytime soon, but yeah,
No,
it's,
but yeah, and we would come together again and be, and that's the beautiful nature of this space that you've built, and the people who've come here to help you put the bricks down and the
yeah, what is it
foundations
with all you
down,
folks?
because we can bask in it, we can bask in it when we're feeling joyous and we have a funny story to tell about a pet, but we can also know that we can come here and be just as vulnerable as we were with the pet that we are mourning, that we're grieving, or that we've lost, as because that's what they give us. They allow us to be completely naked in front of them, completely vulnerable, because without judgment. And that's one of the most beautiful gifts these animals give us, in that they're just accepting of us. They're accepting of whatever salts we're giving off at that moment. They don't question why we're stressed. They just make actions and choices to reduce that stress by licking, by panting a certain way, or by purring. And so, it's beautiful that we can come to this space, and this is part of the growth of humanity, I hope, in that these spaces can be built where we can be as vulnerable as we can with these beautiful spirits that come into our lives, that allow us to be completely naked and completely vulnerable in front of them without fear of judgment, without fear of condemnation, just to be loved on. And we just love on the memories of all of the pets that have been lost that we're remembering today. I'm remembering some of mine as Dancer opens up that door for me. And we're dancing with Wayne alongside the memories that he's feeling right now. And for everyone in the chat now, if that's not the beautiful part of the animalistic side of us coming back a bit, I don't know what is. And if we didn't have this loss, we wouldn't be driven to build this type of space that we can come to as humans and be more natural humans, more animal humans, in my opinion, where we can be vulnerable in front of one another.
Yeah, and someone said earlier in the chat room, I don't know which one who said it, but there we should normalize grief. That's the one thing that
Become too sterile.
you can't, there is such growth in grief. I mean, it's not something that I would care to stay in, but even in that moment, when you're just it's almost renewing in one aspect because when you're grieving and the body responds to the grief of the spirit, and it's not the sadness, it's
No.
the fact that 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 element of your ritual, your routine in your life, these animals, and it's the same thing whether it's a wife, husband, lover, brother, sister, you know, it's the same
A
process.
void. It's a
Yeah,
void. It's a physical void that you have to get used to and assimilated with.
but it's
And
healthy grief.
it's
It is
healthy.
a healthy. It's a
We
purging.
wouldn't know the love. We wouldn't know the love that we grieve today. We wouldn't recognize it. We wouldn't be able to perceive it because we didn't wouldn't have we wouldn't have an opposite lens to look through back at it with. Because if you've got to have that comparison and that duality, and you're right, that process is something. It's a big part of the ritual that we've lost among ourselves, that has lessened the empathy that we have for one another
I
in an
think that if
unquestionable
humanity
manner.
could learn, I look at the world today, and as we're on the brink of madness, by the way, let me just put Judith Kobah will be on with Night Flight Radio tomorrow. We're going to be
Oh,
talking some serious things about where we are as a society and a culture today. With all the tragedy that you see in this, you don't see that human element for something like grief. I
yeah.
mean, for me, it humbled me to come before the creator of all things and to simply surrender myself to the fact that I don't know. As I said, and I was out there on the porch and just sitting in the sun and saying, I don't understand this realm. I mean, I've been here almost 69 years and I still don't fully get it. But
Yeah.
I've been through a lot, as we all have. And I look at where we are right now, and I'm grateful for the tenderness within me. I mean, the fact that I can recognize that and I haven't become hardened by
Mhm.
the hardness of the world. Wow, we need more of that. We need more of that true humanity, is what I'm saying, Jenny.
And animals bring that forward
They
for
do.
us.
They do
Big
bring
step,
that.
because they
Yeah.
haven't been conditioned, they haven't allowed their consciousness, which they do have in abundance, to be maligned and distorted by perceptions of others, or perceptions of that we've got ourselves. So they're unquestionable about that. They're unquestionable about what is this realm. They just experience it and live it. And I feel they have a lot more freedom and movement between realms after death
I think
than
so.
humans do, because they
Oh,
don't question what doors should be there or what gates should be there. Do you know what I mean? They seek out your spirit the same way they seek out your spirit, before they come to you. It's like they knew you were going to have them before you knew you were going to have them. They knew you were going to love them before and it's not because they made a pact with you, it's just because they did it regardless. And so the ritual that you just did without knowing the answers, again, that's a great part of the grief process, to be okay with that, to be
Yeah,
okay with
embrace it.
the
It's all right.
unseen and
You know,
embrace it. It's
give it a
okay.
hug, you
And
know.
yeah,
That's what I
and you did
say.
that through looking after her body, through caring for her body, through preparing and burying the body. That that spirit within you, the essence that she gave over to you, feels that also, and can be with you and actually be the very thing that loves you through that process too, because you've gone through that ritual unquestionably, just because it feels intuitive and it feels as it should do when you're giving reverence to something that's giving you infinite wisdom and infinite love.
I've seen enough that program uh Paranormal Caught on Camera, and they have a collection of the security cameras and what have you where animals are concerned. One that quite moved me was family had lost their dog. It was hit by a car in front of their house, and it was a red red retriever, I think. Anyway, uh, as the security cam, they felt like there was something outside the door, and when they looked back at the footage, there was their dog in the spirit. They've had another one where a deer was hit by a car and captured on security cameras, and it wasn't more than a second later, and the deer emerged, its spirit did, from its body.
Wow.
Just video after video. So when we moved here from Colorado, um, Lynn had lost her friend, Dolly. So I purposely went out because I buried Dolly and told her that, she needed to get into the car because we were leaving. I believe that. I believe that, I don't think Dancer, wherever she may, but I have a sense she's going to be where
Hasn't
she
gone
knows to
anywhere.
be at. Here.
She hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't feel like she's gone anywhere at all.
Yeah.
And again, that's why you can feel those doors being opened and loving you through the process. And Goddess Sabina said grief is a very low vibration. It must be felt and transcend. I agree and I disagree in that I think humans have made grief a very different thing. We've almost try to hurry the process so much that we end up never actually fully processing it. It's a bit like the Eight of Swords in tarot, where you're surrounded by these words, these swords, these thoughts bound up, and you can't see because you've got your eyes covered. That's an okay space to be in for a time, because it's okay to feel your way through those thoughts without being
Yeah. You,
distracted
you
by
have to cleanse
actual
yourself.
touch. Yeah, you have to hold yourself and embrace yourself. But it's important to work through that Eight of Swords, of course, Sabina, to not stay trapped in any one frequency, because any one frequency, high or low, will kill you if you stay in it for too long. Too much of anything will do that to you. So I think it's important for us not to demonize grief, or to give it a timeline, but be very definite in saying, but we do make conscious choices sometimes as humans to stay trapped in any one part of any kind of grief process, whether it's a breakup from a partner or a breakup because of a death. We sometimes trap ourselves. We do that. So it's important that we do work through those stages, but not to stay fixed, to be like the animal, to be unquestionable and moved when we get moved, and laugh when we get that giggle come over us when that pet comes through or that loved one comes through and sends that, and do that unquestionably like a child would or like a pet would.
I had grief. I had a Porsche Boxer. Loved that car,
Oh,
except when you had to freaking change the oil on it. You have to lift the engine out. But anyway, so it got wrecked, and I grieved over that car for a couple of days.
I bet.
Cried.
I'm
cried. I
feeling for you
mean,
now.
you know, I was emotionally attached to that car, and that
Yeah,
was just a materialistic thing. But, and I'm looking back because you think about these, it's time of great reflection, and I look back on the things that I grieved. Um, and I go that, when you think about it, there's a lot of other grief that we have in our life, some imposed on us, but others that we just experience. And so, yeah, uh, again, it's the gratitude that
yeah,
I, as an individual sentient spirit being, I grow from this. And
yes,
and and
yes,
there's always the hope for tomorrow. I am a hopeful person by nature. You can
yes.
slam me with the hardest shit you want. I'm still going to come out smelling like a rose. I don't give
Yeah.
up.
Well, roses grow well with shit, you know.
They
Thank
grow
you
well,
very
don't
much.
they?
Thank you for the compost, haters.
Exactly.
Throw it on me. I'll
Well,
shake it to the
and
roots and then
laughter is
be
a good
done.
healing,
Of
and
course. And
you
and
know,
this is why we used to have
it's a
pets going around the
celebration, by the way.
hospital.
My little
Yeah,
friend may have left, but it's a celebration of her life.
oh, absolutely. And thank you for her for being in your life that we could all be a small fractal in her space. They build these worlds, these pets, and that's why we've become so sterile. We used to regularly, I grew up in hospital a lot when I was younger because of the things I was born with. I was in for months at a time sometimes. And so I've seen the transition of hospitals where you used to have all of the kids' artwork up, and even dying children would laugh with me. We would find space in that pain to laugh, and it would be when the pets would come around, the compassionate pets, or the clown would come around, the balloon maker would come around, because we still put a lot of emphasis on the fact that we know if we can reduce cortisol, even if it's not to fully heal the body, but just to give somebody some reprieve from pain, if we can bring that down, then we can actually reprieve that pain in ways that morphine can't touch. That laughter. And that's where and laughter is not inappropriate in any circumstance, which is why often children laugh in the most, weird circumstances when they really doesn't it doesn't look like they should be laughing. When they're getting told off, they'll burst out laughing. When they get into it, because it lightens the load immediately in the spirit and in the body. So, it's great to have those nuances of grief, to be able to break into tears unquestionably and laugh
It's kind
unquestionably.
of like when we moved here. I was in that house for 18 years. And although we had a new home waiting for us, when you're, pulling away from that house for the last time, there's a moment of grief there because 18 years of imprinted memories in that building. It absorbed your energy. It was a part of your
Mm,
life that defined memories, the happenings. And
painful.
well, it is painful. And when, you close that door, and though you walk through the new door is still unfamiliar. It may have
Mm,
a familiar thing. It's a house, but houses define what we are. They define our lives. So it's very
exactly.
normal is what I hope everyone's getting in here. We love the pets there. We love our loved ones.
Yeah.
And, it's I love the wildlife that we have here. We have turkeys, wild turkeys here.
Oh,
And
wow.
oh man, Jenny,
They've got attitude. They've got attitude.
it's quite amazing because there's a couple of hens and the females, they're about, you know, seriously almost 4 feet high.
Big girls, yeah.
And so someone I was talking to, and they said, well, you have to have, no doubt there has to be a male turkey. I said, yeah. And then this morning, as I'm burying Dancer, I hear this Tom, he's calling out there, and it's that process. I mean, it's the ebb and flow of life, and I'm a richer soul for experiencing both the highs and the lows. I am grateful for the highs and the lows because it it I don't, it's the fact that I love surfing. I grew up, as a surfer, and I got to know the swells and how you can begin to judge a swell to get that ride, and it's all part of this beautiful package.
Yeah,
That's all I can say.
yeah.
It's a freaking beautiful package.
But you have to work to get to that point in surfing to feel
Yeah,
the
you do.
curve and feel the wave coming before, because it's going to teach you a few lessons first, isn't it? It's going to slap you about a bit at first
Been
until
slammed
you
down more than
recognize.
once.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. So until you learn that curve, and I just want to speak to Lost in Space, who said that, and I think Enjoy in the chat. Sorry if I misquote Lost in Space, but it's difficult. I can't forget about the trauma that I saw, and that's hard. It is hard when it's a more traumatic exit from the body. But I would draw your attention to what seems like a really simplistic point, that if you were to take some time this evening or whatever time it is for you to write down that pain on one side of a piece of paper, about the trauma, even if you don't want to do too many words, just put trauma on that side of the piece of paper, and then just start writing down some of the memories that you have that totally counteract that. You'll find you have that one trauma here for that pet, and a list that your arm gets aching, for writing, an endless, infinite list of gratitude. So try not to also ignore that all of that beauty on this side of the piece of paper for that one trauma. Allow yourself to be comfortable in this space, to be open to the trauma, for us to open those doors with you to say, but remember this. And if that's the price you paid for all of this, then somehow that could bring you some peace to start being able to remember without remembering that trauma first, without the trauma always having to be the gateway to you to get to the nice place. Let's remap that brain and those neurons for you to be able to process that gateway of trauma in order to be able to then bypass straight into the memories that bring you to your knees because they're just so loving, or just so that you're just so grateful for. I would speak to that for you.
And there is always the tomorrow. I mean,
Absolutely.
and all of us, we've all experienced grief in our lives, but yet we're all here. We've all grown from it. And
Mhm.
the one thing I know about time and human memory is that our brains are designed to begin to filter out the pain.
Yeah.
And eventually, you don't remember the pain. And you can remember the incident, but you don't remember the pain.
Nobody would have a second child if that did not happen. Yeah, nobody would have a second
I've
child.
only passed kidney stones, and they say that for a
Yeah,
male, that comes about, but and they said it only comes close, and I can only imagine what
yeah.
that. No, I
Yeah,
can't imagine. I just can't.
but you cannot remember that pain as that pain really truly was in that moment. If lenses were taking flickering, resonance of the moment of that pain, then you would see on the chart that it was off the charts. But for you to even try and gather the gateways to get back to that, to really feel that pain of that contraction, you can't do it. It goes away. And I think that's partly for procreation, but also partly because it's the more animalistic side of us that is unquestioning again. We allow ourselves to process that part in order to be able to go on and live and experience
I
and
say this,
enjoy life.
Jenny. Most men would never have sex again if they had to actually experience the contractions of birth. I mean,
Absolutely,
it's like,
absolutely. And
no,
I'm
no,
sure that's
no.
another reason women have such cycles, in that it's a little bit like when we compare the cycles to birth, we think, oh yeah, the cycles aren't so bad after all. It's that balance in life, isn't it? That you say, yeah, I can put up with that as long as I'm not putting up with that every month. And so we do need that comparison, and we do have that duality. And I think it's good that we don't demonize that duality and don't see conversations where we're in remembrance, and it's lower vibration only because, like, a cat's purr is a lower vibration. It brings you, when you're in the right space with the right people, to a place of peace that you can discuss anything and be accepting of it and receiving of it. That deep purr brings you down low frequency that isn't necessarily negative, it's just calm, and it opens up certain doors that can allow other frequencies that laughter can be carried on to all of a sudden break through, through the
And
conversations
there
that we're
and there's
having.
different types of grief. As we're sitting here again, I talked about my Porsche. That really bummed me out. And I remember when we were really done wrong and we lost tens of millions of dollars. Here's something I'll speak to everyone about this thing on grief. It's all right to feel it, just don't bathe in it.
Hmm.
That's all I
Hmm.
got to say. And you
I
know
don't
what
think
it's
it's
done?
grief then. I don't think it's grief then. That's why I think the term grief can be confused a lot and demonized a lot, because people who choose to then transmute that grief into something that's more fixed, because grief is transient, it's passing, it's a process. It comes back in waves, yes, but it doesn't stick. It's not meant to be sticky and solid. It's meant to be a tide where you go up, you go down, you process. But with grief, where people choose to stay stuck, like you could have chosen to stay stuck and become so toxic
Well,
about
that's
that
what
whole
you can.
life.
You can't.
You
That was
can't.
my point to that is that
It kills
through
you.
every trauma I have experienced, I've come out stronger. And
Hmm.
the grief with Dancer, I mean, yeah, 13 years, that's a lot of time that you spend. It's a living soul. And I understand the difference between something that is of a divine force in nature and then something that's materialistic. However, in our society, success is many times judged by the accomplishments of what that success brings. Not saying that it's in any way comparative, but if people have committed suicide because they've lost, fortunes, because they can't see beyond that, no matter what the physical loss, no matter what the emotional loss is, there is yet another day.
Yes.
And that's how I look at it. Um,
Mhm.
Now, I don't know in the spirit realm if they go by days. I don't know. I would assume that they have some semblance, but yeah. So while I'm here, yeah, I'm again, you said it at the beginning of this show. I am a man of favor because to be humbled is to always know where you stand.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Jenny, we're in the midst of something that it still boggles my imagination. I mean,
Oh,
it
it is
does.
crazy out there, and it is so unnatural out there right now. The consciousness that's growing out there, the divisions are so unnatural, and this is where we give such gratitude to these pets that actually bring us back down into that grounded space of that. Elephants are measured in how strong their tribe is, in that they all mourn
And they
their young.
grieve. They've
They
actually shown
grieve
them grieve.
so
Yeah.
much. I know my animals have grieved. I know dogs that I've had have grieved. I know horses that have grieved. Horses grieve terribly when a horse dies in the field. They are solemn for weeks. They give themselves over to that grief for that process to be occurring within them as a herd, unquestionably again. And so I think it is so important that we have these spaces where we are connected in our more natural animalistic form with these other natural animalistic forms that actually bring us into that grounded space and takes away all of the veneers of of rules that have been made up, borders and controls and all things that actually, aren't symbiotic with life in a lot of ways. These animals bring us into a space where of what's really important. And it's the experience, it's the sharing, it's the connectedness,
Well,
it's the
dancer
very,
showed me what, I don't believe in the God because I think God is finite, but I told Lynn this morning and I was crying. I said, I said, I feel honored to, and I was looking at her, I said, because God came and visited us in the
yeah,
form of dancer.
yeah. Oh, touched you.
I
And that's
mean,
where they can
that's
humble
what
you.
love does. And if that isn't
Yeah,
what the creator is, if that isn't what God is, then I don't know what is not.
yeah.
And what a privilege all of us have. Those of us who have lost, those of us who've experienced these pets, what we call, I mean, I got some family members that I swear are the spawn of Satan, but that's and that's the human side, that's human and human. But this precious animal, I mean, if that's not the representation of what love is, then I don't know what is love.
I don't. And you look at things, miracles that happen, and some of those miracles with Pop Pop, very much like Dancer, small dog with such a mighty heart, and I call her a lion inside because that lion can come out and absolute. It would be self-sacrificial, but without question, she would be self-sacrificing for Rosie or any of us, but in particular Rosie. And so but Pop Pop's eyes, sometimes she just brings me to my knees. I babysat her the other day, because the boys and mum and Rosie had been well enough to go to the monster trucks. So she was with me and I'm carving ones. And all of a sudden you look over and you're so busy and trying to get things done. And these little button eyes are just holding space and time to watch everything that you're doing and just wait
Uh,
patiently for nothing other than a hey baby girl and a pat, and a quick cuddle. And I looked into those eyes and I thought they melt me sometimes, even when I'm not in that space of wanting to shed a tear or particularly wanting to fall into the void of deep loving love. I look into her eyes and she has me. She has me no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm busy doing ones, whether I've got something I've got to get done there and then. Those eyes stop me in my tracks and
yeah.
humble me with
And Joyce,
nothing else than love.
God is not what the Judeo-Christian God is. It's my
No,
concept of God is that power. Listen, if you have the power to love, you have the power to give love, to receive love. That, in my
yeah.
opinion, makes you a god or a goddess.
Yes, yes.
I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
that's what
Absolutely.
it's all about. And this whole show, what it's about is the dedication, a thank you to a good friend, this precious little puppy dog that filled our lives. And, it's at the end, it's the evidence of great favor. I mean,
Yes.
there's so many people that live and die in this world and never have that experience of a companion, a dog that will follow you anywhere, a dog that, well, as you said, because Dancer would love to lick me. And I mean, that was her big deal. And
Yeah.
I knew it was, her way of, it's like even when she started going blind just by licking me, she knew that it was me, you
Yeah.
know?
She
Yeah.
was tasting you, checking you were okay, checking your cortisol levels and everything. Is
Yeah.
you okay? Can you
Yeah.
cook reading?
Yeah.
Giving
Yeah.
they give you a scan with that magical tongue of theirs that they haven't switched off. We've switched off those parts of our tongue, with diet and whatnot and consciousness. We've blocked a lot of those natural things that we do have to be activated again, just on the taste buds alone. That they're like
And she'd nip at me if I was, scratching her or something. I mean,
Yeah, should say, stop it.
so
You can
anyway,
break the skin. Thank you,
uh,
Dan. Thank you to all of the people in the chat and all of the
yeah,
people who've been
great
brave
hopping.
enough to open their hearts to these animals, to these pets, to these beings that can bring us to our knees, but nevertheless you're still brave enough to experience the love they're willing to offer. And because of that, we can create these spaces. And because of that, we can create these spaces that we can be vulnerable in other ways too, when we need to be, when it's to do with human to human relationships, or when it's to do with spirit world relationships. If we can be human in this space, and bring empathy and love into this space, it builds the foundations for an unconditional love and a communion that's so important, that animals give to each other freely. And so I'm glad that we reflect it in this group, and thank you
And
for
I'm glad
sharing.
for this group. This has been good therapy. I mean, my spirit is high. It's in a high vibration. I will go on. And, this is what I love about this group. Hey, Grandpa O'Brien, 420, what's up? Good to see you.
What
Um,
20 group? Sorry.
but this group is therapy for, you know, for those souls that have been bruised, and the grief that comes with it. It's when you get in immersed men and women like this that you find out that there's a greater purpose and a greater reason to. I may not be able to grasp it totally, but that's cool. The smartest answer I know sometimes is I don't know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
isn't that exciting to you wouldn't want to know everything. You only
No,
did know
no, no,
everything.
no, no. That's why I don't want to be, people once said, well, would you ever be, CEO? And it's like this. No. And here's my other thing. Why would someone want to be God? Personally, that's a pain, and I think that would be a pain in my ass big time. I don't want that
Well, I
responsibility.
think it's a disease. I think it's a virus
That's
in
like, no freaking
anything that
way.
wants. I don't want that work. I don't want followers in a way that they want me to
Uh,
dictate, because I'm changeable. I've got a
yeah, yeah. It's
plasticity
like,
about me.
yeah.
And as soon as you become God, you're literally limited into whatever that perception of that person that made you that God wants you to be. So as soon as you start changing and evolving and whatnot, they're not happy with that God. They'll put you on a cross. So
In a
thank you.
second.
No, thank you. I'll stay in my own goddess space, and give love to those that are in their
Oh,
space.
Grandpa Brian said me and Trina are on the way to the Grand Canyon. Wow, I didn't
Oh,
know that. Well, there you
yeah.
go. Well,
Well, wish them there
yeah,
for me. And I've got
take
to
pictures.
mention,
That's all I got to say.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Oh,
Safe
definitely throw
journey. We just speak that out to you. And while I'm thinking of that, Blazing River said on Easter, their well went dry. I
Oh,
guess they live close to the Alamosa River, so we're just going to speak favor on that situation and see that well refilled. I mean, if you're
yeah, let's
depending
speak
on that for
water
water,
into that
yeah,
space. Dance on that
yeah.
ground, and we'll dance with you. We'll do that with you etherically. Let's speak a burst of water coming into that well, so that it fills and cleans, and that it's oxygenated and pure. Let that water be a miracle that you speak of for generations to come, that that well never dries again. So we just speak to the land, and we speak to all of the little cracks and crevices that need to be in place just perfectly for that water to trickle in into a huge flow where you are overflowing with water. We speak that over your land, we speak that over you, we speak that over your well. We wish that into your well.
Wishing
We
well, we well to be
wish
wished.
you well. We
Yeah,
we
yeah,
do. And
yeah.
there's grief people, that I've got to mention my friend who's training to be a pets grief counselor at the moment. She felt the calling to do that a few months ago, to be a counselor for people who want to process the grief of. So she's not ready to go out there yet, but there's people out there also that find the importance of this so much, and the impact that it can have on us so much, that there is a space for midwives like Heather, who's going to be doing this, to be a midwife for people through that process. And we've done that for each other here today. And we've also caused a well to overflow. Guarantee, let the rivers flow
That's what
into
I'd
that
say.
well.
Well, thank you, everyone. Again, Grandpa Brian, good to see you. You and Trina, we just speak favor over you and have a good
Yeah.
trip. Everybody else in the chat room. Um, I got in my spirit, the song Walking on Sunshine. So that's how I feel. Jenny, thank you, dear. And Goddess Sabina, we're going to get you on next week once I can get all the ladies here together. And in the interim, stay tuned for tomorrow. Jenny, much love to you, darling.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Well,
Uh,
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
and thank
you.
you to everybody here because we've been put off a week because with the website just with being poorly because Mum never gets poorly and she caught this bug too. But it's next week if we've got time, I can show you what I've been doing with this laptop that this group facilitated a
Sure,
great
sure.
part of
Be more than happy to
because
do that.
the website's looking really really good. And so thank you to everybody for that. So I speak that same favor for the well and into everybody's hearts
Y'all are the
also.
best. All of
Thank
you
you.
are. Much love. Lauren, much love to you, darling. Mary wins. Cowboy, and there's just so many. Flight Risk, are they letting you out? Jackie J, you're absolutely right. Nothing missing, nothing broken. By the way, just really quickly, when you speak nothing missing, nothing broken, you're giving this thing that sometimes things don't go your way, but it's because there's nothing missing, nothing broken is the reason for it. And sometimes we don't see the whole thing, but y'all get it out. John
It's the
Price, much love. Gilbert.
Chinese vase, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's that proverb of the Chinese vase, and I did it for one of Rosie's vases that I broke by accident, and it broke into so many pieces. But it was a lovely jug, that you would keep flowers in. And I read about that Chinese proverb where they use golden thread glitter to put it back together, so that it'll never hold the same water, but the cracks and the love that I put into it to take the time to put those pieces together again also can be so touching and important, and created a one-off vase that Rosie can still look at now to this day and know that I felt so panicked and bad about that I spent hours in private with gold glitter glue, fixing it so that it could be still presentable in the shape that it was. So, but it didn't hold the same thing, but those cracks represented something. So the cracks are good.
There we go. All right,
Mm,
everybody. Much love. See y'all tomorrow. And
yeah.
remember, turn your frown upside down and it becomes that big smile. All right. Bye bye.